You have been lied to about loneliness. Every therapist, every self-help guru, every well-meaning friend who told you that your desire to be alone was a problem, they were wrong. Not slightly wrong, dangerously wrong. Your instinct to pull away from people is not a disorder. It is a diagnostic tool. It is your intelligence trying to save your life. The modern world has turned solitude into a disease. They medicalize it. They pathologize it. They slap labels on it: antisocial, avoided, isolated, as if your refusal to participate in meaningless small talk at a dinner party is somehow evidence of psychological damage. Arthur Schopenhauer saw through this collective delusion 200 years ago. He understood something the wellness industry will never print on a motivational poster. The desire to be alone is not a sign of brokenness. It is a sign that your mind has outgrown the room. You feel it every single day. You leave a social gathering, and instead of the warm glow they promised you would feel, there is a strange, hollow exhaustion sitting in your chest. You just spent 3 hours performing, nodding at opinions you found shallow, laughing at jokes that were not funny, translating your actual thoughts into something palatable enough for the room to digest without choking on it. You walked in as yourself. You walked out as a watered-down version of yourself. And the worst part, the part that keeps you up at night, is that nobody noticed the difference. Nobody noticed because they were never talking to you. They were talking to the mask, and the mask is all they ever wanted. That exhaustion is not a flaw in your character. It is data. It is your nervous system telling you that you just spent 3 hours in a place that was costing you everything and giving you nothing. But you have been trained, conditioned to interpret that signal as something wrong with you. You should get out more. You need to put yourself out there. Humans are social creatures, and so you override the signal again and again, dragging yourself to gatherings that drain you, maintaining friendships that feel like obligations, smiling through conversations that make you feel more alone than any empty room ever could. Schopenhauer would tell you to stop, not gradually, immediately, because what you are experiencing is not loneliness. It is contamination. There is a distinction that the modern world has deliberately blurred, and it is destroying you. Loneliness and solitude are not the same thing. They are opposites. Loneliness is the pain of being disconnected from yourself while surrounded by others. Solitude is the peace of being connected to yourself while surrounded by no one. You have been taught to fear the wrong one. You have been taught to fear the silence, but the silence is not empty. It is full of everything the noise was drowning out: your actual thoughts, your real priorities, the quiet, persistent voice of your own mind that has been trying to reach you for years but cannot get a word in over the roar of other people's expectations. Schopenhauer wrote that a man can be himself only so long as he is alone. Read that again. He did not say a man is lonely when he is alone. He said a man is himself. The implication is surgical. When you are with others, you are not yourself. You are a negotiation. You are a compromise between who you actually are and who the room needs you to be. Every conversation is a trade. You give up a piece of your authenticity in exchange for acceptance, for belonging, for the brief narcotic hit of being included. And like any narcotic, it wears off. You get home, the high fades, and you are left with less of yourself than you started with. This is not poetry, this is neuroscience. Matthew Lieberman's research at UCLA demonstrated that social rejection activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. The brain processes exclusion the way it processes a broken bone. Evolution hardwired this response because, for most of human history, being cast out of the tribe meant death. Your ancestors who felt the sting of rejection survived because that pain drove them back to the group. But here is the brutal update that your biology has not received. You are no longer on the savannah. Being alone on a Tuesday evening does not mean a lion is about to eat you. Your brain is running ancient software in a modern world, and it is generating false alarms that are ruining your life. Schopenhauer understood this before the neuroscience existed to prove it. He saw that most human socializing is not connection, it is fear management. People do not gather because they genuinely enjoy each other. They gather because they cannot tolerate the terror of being alone with their own thoughts. Sit with that. The next time you are at a party, watch the room. Watch how people clutch their drinks like life rafts. Watch how they scan for the next conversation before the current one has even ended. Watch how the moment there is a lull, a silence, a gap in the noise, panic flickers across their faces. They are not having fun. They are running from themselves, and they want you to run with them. You know the specific type of friendship that is killing you. It is the one built entirely on routine. You have known them for years, maybe decades. You meet for drinks. You cover the same 5 topics: work complaints, surface gossip, vague plans that never materialize. You leave feeling exactly the same as when you arrived, maybe slightly worse because you just lost 3 hours you will never get back. Hours you could have spent reading, thinking, building, creating, but you keep going because the calendar says you should, because canceling feels like a crime. Because somewhere in your programming, a voice whispers that good people maintain their friendships no matter what. Schopenhauer dismantled this logic with one observation: most people confuse the age of a relationship with the value of it. Just because a friendship has existed for a long time does not mean it is good. It means it is old. That is all. A prison sentence is also long. You would not celebrate its duration. But you do this with friendships constantly. You pour energy into connections that stopped nourishing you years ago simply because ending them feels like a moral failure. It is not a moral failure. It is an audit, and every serious mind must conduct one. Think of your mental energy as a financial portfolio. You have a fixed amount. Every interaction is an investment. Some investments yield returns, genuine stimulation, emotional depth, intellectual challenge, a feeling of being understood without having to perform. These are rare. Guard them. But most social investments are dead weight. They sit in your portfolio draining management fees while generating zero returns. A competent investor would liquidate them immediately, but you are not a competent investor of your own attention. You are sentimental. You are loyal to assets that have been losing value for years because selling feels cruel. Schopenhauer had no patience for this sentimentality. He treated human relationships the way a surgeon treats a patient. If the limb is dead, you cut it. You do not keep it attached out of nostalgia. Nostalgia does not prevent gangrene. But what about meaningful connection? What about the friendships that do nourish you? Schopenhauer was not a man who rejected all human contact. He was a man who rejected bad human contact with the ferocity of someone whose survival depended on it. He maintained a small number of deep, intellectually rigorous relationships throughout his life. He corresponded with minds he respected. He engaged with people who challenged him, who matched his capacity for depth. What he refused, absolutely and without apology, was the obligation to pretend that all human connection is equal. It is not. 1 hour with a mind that understands you is worth more than a decade of small talk with someone who does not even know you exist behind the mask. The ancient Stoics understood this mathematics. Seneca wrote that the primary sign of a well-ordered mind is a man's ability to sit still in one place and enjoy his own company. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the world at the time, repeatedly retreated into his own thoughts, writing his private meditations not for an audience, but for himself. These were not broken men hiding from the world. These were the most capable men of their era, choosing solitude because they understood something the crowd never will. The quality of your thinking is directly proportional to the quality of your silence. Now consider the opposite. Consider what happens to your mind when you are never alone. There is a concept in psychology called ego depletion. Every social interaction requires you to regulate yourself. You monitor your tone. You adjust your vocabulary. You suppress thoughts that might offend. You perform micro-calculations about what to say, when to laugh, how to stand. Each of these calculations costs energy. Roy Baumeister's research demonstrated that self-regulation draws from a finite pool. When the pool is empty, your judgment collapses. You become impulsive. You become irritable. You make decisions you would never make with a full tank. This is why you feel like a different person after a long weekend of socializing. You are a different person. You are the depleted version. The version running on fumes. The version that snaps at someone you love because a stranger at a brunch you did not want to attend spent 45 minutes telling you about their kitchen renovation. You did not lose your temper because you are a bad person. You lost your temper because you are a bankrupt. You spent every coin of patience on people who did not deserve it, and you had nothing left for the ones who did. Schopenhauer saw society as a fire. Stand close enough and you feel warmth. Stand too close and you burn. Most people are burning. They are so enmeshed in the social machinery that they have forgotten what their own uncontaminated thoughts sound like. They form opinions by consensus. They adopt beliefs by proximity. They do not think, they absorb. And then they call the result their personality. You have watched this happen. You have watched a friend slowly become a copy of their social circle, their language shifting, their opinions morphing, their taste recalibrating to match the room. It is not growth, it is erosion. The river of other people's influence slowly wearing away the stone of their original self until nothing distinctive remains. This is why solitude is not a retreat, it is a reclamation. When you sit alone, you are not hiding from the world, you are recovering yourself from it. Every hour of genuine solitude is an hour of deprogramming. The voices of other people begin to fade. The opinions you absorbed without choosing them start to loosen their grip. Your actual preferences, your real thoughts, the ideas that belong to you and not to the room you happen to be standing in, they surface slowly, quietly, like objects appearing on the shore after a tide pulls back. But the world will punish you for this. Make no mistake, solitude is an act of defiance in a culture addicted to togetherness. The moment you start declining invitations, the social immune system activates. Friends will guilt you, family will worry, colleagues will gossip. They will frame your absence as a problem to be solved, rather than a choice to be respected. Are you okay? Becomes their surveillance tool. We miss you becomes a leash. You have changed becomes an accusation dressed as concern. They are not worried about you. They are worried about what your absence says about them. If you can be happy alone, it implies that their company was never essential. That is an intolerable conclusion for someone who has built their entire identity on being needed. Schopenhauer warned that the man who departs from the crowd will be the first to be attacked by the crowd, not because he has done anything wrong, but because his departure is an implicit indictment of their way of life. You do not even have to say a word. Your empty chair at the dinner table speaks for itself. It says, "I found something better to do." And that sentence, unspoken, will generate more hostility than any argument you have ever made out loud. Let them be hostile. Their hostility is confirmation. It tells you that your solitude is not passive withdrawal. It is an active threat to their worldview. They need you at the table not for your company, but for your complicity. Your presence validates the ritual. When you leave, the ritual is exposed for what it is, a group of people distracting each other from the emptiness they refuse to examine alone. There is a practical architecture to protecting your solitude. It begins with the elimination of performative availability. You do not owe anyone an instant response. You do not owe anyone the reason for declining. "I am not available" is a complete sentence. You do not need to fabricate an excuse. You do not need to offer an alternative date. The moment you start justifying your solitude, you have already conceded that it requires justification. It does not. Sleep does not require justification. Eating does not require justification. Solitude is a biological necessity for a mind that operates at a high level, and you will treat it as such. Build rituals around your aloneness. Schopenhauer walked the same route in Frankfurt every single day, alone with his poodle for decades. Thoreau went to the woods. Nietzsche wandered the mountains of Sils Maria for hours in complete silence. These were not eccentric habits. They were scheduled maintenance for extraordinary machines. Your mind is a machine. It requires regular periods of zero input to function at its best. When you are constantly receiving, you never process. When you never process, your thoughts become a landfill. Everything piled on top of everything else. Nothing sorted, nothing examined, nothing discarded. Solitude is the sorting. It is the quiet act of going through the pile, keeping what serves you and burning the rest. You will lose people. Accept this now. When you begin to choose yourself over the social calendar, some friendships will not survive the transition. The ones that die were already dead. They were sustained by your performance, not your presence. The ones that survive will transform. They will become deeper. They will become less frequent but more meaningful. You will find that a single honest conversation once a month feeds you more than 50 shallow interactions a week. Quality will replace quantity. And for the first time in years, you will leave an interaction feeling more like yourself instead of less. Schopenhauer believed that the highest form of human existence was the life of the mind, not the life of the network, not the life of the group chat, the life of the group chat, the life of the mind, a life where your primary relationship is with your own thoughts, your own work, your own evolving understanding of the world. He called this the aristocracy of the intellect. It has nothing to do with wealth or birth. It has everything to do with how jealously you guard the space between your ears. You clicked on this video because something in you already knows the truth. You do not need more friends. You do not need a bigger circle. You do not need to force yourself into rooms that shrink you. What you need is the permission to trust the instinct you have been suppressing your entire life. The instinct that says you are not broken for wanting to be alone. You are awake. And in a world of sleepwalkers, staying awake requires a room of your own. Your solitude is not your wound. It is your sharpest weapon. Stop apologizing for it. Start building with it. The greatest minds in human history did not become great in a crowd. They became great in the silence. The crowd was too afraid to enter. If you are still here, you understand what most never will. Subscribe if you have not. There is much more ahead.